Hi guys, welcome back to my channels. In this video I like to share how to draw arch openings on the another octagonal building structure, side views in perspective without rely only on the vanishing points. Before moving forward, I like to give you the context and why I decided to draw this structure, octagonal building structure. And from my previous video, I shared that I went to cycling around toward the Isabella plantation, and on the way, I riding through this suburban area or some park and some hidden part of West London, and I discovered that there were numbers of those are beautiful buildings that were built years ago, and they were beautiful, and of course it inspired me to draw some of the drawings. And of course I'm not drawing the exact how the buildings look like. I rather draw it the way I like to draw it in my own version. For example, the building that I found referred to is this the Orleans Gallery in West London. One of those surviving classical neoclassical buildings, and it looks rather beautiful, and I like to draw it to understand how it works, but I'm not doing it exact how the building looks, but to draw it from my understanding how it works in terms of structure, in terms of shape, and how to draw in perspective, which I think is worthwhile to share, how to understand octagonal building structure in perspective. Giving a little bit context of West London. In West London, a lot of surviving beautiful building structure that were built that survived not bombarded by during the Second World War, and that's why a lot of those classical building or neoclassical building still around mostly in West London, unlike East London. East London, lots of new structures, because during the Second World War the German bombarded East London. A lot of East London, those beautiful buildings actually destroyed during the Second World War, and in East London a lot of new buildings, unlike West London. Nevertheless, I discovered during my cycling around numbers of these classical buildings, and this video I like to share how I draw this Orient Gallery, the octagonal structure in the arch opening. I like to try that, but in my own version, not the exact building. And I hope it's worthwhile sharing, and thank you very much. And please click the subscribe button and like and share. Thank you. In this video, I like to share how I create arch opening for this octagonal structure. Here is the drawing that I started already, the cubic shaped, and where I find the center point on each side before I divide them into 8 faces, which is the octagonal structure. This line indicating the what I started to indicate the line at the back will be hidden, but it is important to start with to find as a reference before proceeding for more sketch lines. Diagonal to find a central point for this face, and find the vertical, just a fine line, and on the other similar to this side, fine line to find the center point. And of course at the back also there, to find the central line on this side, on that hidden part. Just like that. Of course this line at the back will be vanish as the drawing went by, but for now it is important to have it for the line, the guidelines and all references, as this is the perspective drawing without rely on the vanishing point. So with this center point, we'll determine where roughly the face of these on the side, so that will be connected to the visible front side elevations of this octagonal structure. Like that. Now the next step is of course to find the central point of this, the central point between the first and the top of this cubic shape, just like this. This is approximately the center to divide into two halves. The same process I did before for the previous videos. From that central point, I then divide them as into half of this. Again, cross the line with the diagonal on each side, and where the diagonal line cross each other, that will be another center point of this cube shape, just like this. Then create the vertical line. Again, it's very fine line, not to be too dark. What I'm trying to do here is to find roughly the equal proportion of this octagon face on each side, so it looks equal in proportion in perspective. This is optional, but for this exercise I like to do it this way, and divide them into half and divide them into half, just like this. Wherever the cross come, the diagonal line cross each other, there will be another guidelines, just like this. This is for this side, and of course I'm going to repeat the same thing on this side, identical to what I did on the other side just now, to find the central point, the reference, the guideline for another face of this octagonal structure. The line is a bit wobbly at the moment, but doesn't matter. This is just a sketchy. It will all disappear when we start hatching them more detail into it. This line will be disappeared. Now there's a cross line there, another cross there, and a cross there. And I find that center line there, similar to the other one, pretty identical to that. Now that is the line for the outline of this side face of the octagon face, because the octagonal shape has 8 faces, just like this. And of course, similar to that was the guideline of the outline of this structure. And of course, that line where that will be connected flat. This is another face. So on this side we have 3 faces that we see in the visible on these side views, just like that. When I find that, that's it. Just connect it to it. Just create the horizontal line from one outline of it to the other outline. Let's create another face of this octagon structure. And of course that was the outline of that too on the other side there. Pretty identical. And then add more thicker line for now, the outline of this structure, and of course that too to be. And the next step, of course, now that I find the central line of this, to divide into section, but below and above. So then I divide them again to make it easy to divide into half again, because each of these line will be the guideline for each of information that I need to add more. and it will be in perspective without rely on one or two single vanishing points. So vanishing point exists within this structure, this building itself, without going toward this one. Assume there's a vanishing point, just like this. The process repeat the same thing, exactly like this. Center line, repeat the same process as this is now. Then add more. I like to add more of this detail, much more dense, more compact, just like this. And before going further, before my drawing get lost in those multiple lines overlapping each other, usually I always add this a dot or tiny little circle to remind myself where they are. Just like this. Now what I'm going to do is to find the central line of this one face by crossing that line where the diagonal line crossing each other. That will be the point where the center of this face. And of course on the other side, what I do now is to create another central line there on each side to indicate the outlines of this opening profile, just like this. But of course I'm going to offset it slightly similar size to that line that I did the horizontal lines as a reference of this opening frame or structure, just like this. Starting with the rectangular shape now as a reference, then I add the arch shape outline on the top, just like this. Yeah, I started with the outline, reach the top there, because that will be the outline between the opening and the flat wall before I offset it inward to indicate the opening frame, just like this. The line is a bit overlapping at the moment, but don't worry too much, as this line will be vanished and also become part of the hatch to indicate the depth of this building structure. Then of course I repeat the same on this side, exactly the same thing. Crossed where the line cross, that will be the outline of the opening, just like that. And of course I need to offset it again. This is about mix this with reference line, and observation is really important. Cross the line there. Now this is the arch side views. It's quite tricky, but it is in this exercise, sketchy exercise to indicate the arch opening, and it is important to start with very fine line, not too much, because sometimes the mistakes is not seen at first, then only realize after. Then it is important to draw it finely, then add more after when it looks correct in terms of shape. Now of course I on this face and I put the offset inward line to indicate the opening structure, just like this. And of course on the other side slightly smaller because it's side views in perspective. Of course the next is I find this center, assume this is a half of circle shape to create this arch, I assume there's a center point that will be showing the center point as a guideline to indicate where each of these bricks or stone structure on the lintel on this arch opening direct toward the center of that will be the pattern to indicate the pattern and structure of this brick wall, and of course become part of the decoration of this or cosmetic of this building fabric on the facade, similar. And of course I add more detail on this bricks opening the structure by adding more layer of this brick outlines. Next is to add more thicker line above. This will be the it's not going to be brick, there will be more of a cornice to add a bit of character on these buildings. Now I find the center point of that face because I'm going to create a full circle of the opening above this arch opening. Then I cross again in between like this to find another center of that, divide them like that, like this. Where the line cross, this will be the outline of each of the circle opening, just like this. Cross and find another center line. Now then I reach the end of each one of that, like this. And similar process with it on the other side though. That apply to each one of it. The one across, that will be the outline of the circle opening. I could just use the without putting the reference, but for this exercise it is important to put the reference. Once you get used to it, you don't have to, but this is the first principle or the first method to get the drawing look right in terms of perspective and proportion. The next one is when I've done the outline information for the opening and also the ornamental features above the opening, in between and above on the flat roof, then add more detail on that horizontal line to indicate as the outline of the brick wall. And of course the next one to add more detail on that round circle opening to give it much thicker frames. So here it is. Now the next one is to move down further to indicate the below of that windows opening, to indicate the stool below that. And of course now is to indicate the side views of this opening to reference of how the thickness, the depth of this building structure that is be seen on the windows opening. Otherwise just flat drawings. The same process, this drawing is all about adding as much information as possible for now with the fine lines. Just like that. And of course it's all about being realistic at the moment. It's about as much information needed for these buildings before adding thicker lines or a darker line where it need to be, and the center line, and then add more detail of that the way this bricks is laid under the window, starting point, center point. I'm adding the detail of this under this window to just look similar to the vertical part of it, just to correspond to that, similar, and of course the same on the other side, on the side of that elevation. And of course now the next process, after I've done all the information I need, and then I'll start with the thicker line to add to indicate where the shade is, where the light's coming from. By doing this, these buildings and this drawing then become like three-dimensional visually, rather than just lines and lines. The same process. I just start with the vertical hatch first before I cross it, and of course that on the other side, on top of the arch. By doing this, I bring this drawing, differentiate between inside and outside it, as though 3D or three-dimensional visually. And of course the one above the opening, the circle opening above, but make it darker. And there assume there's a shadow of that structure on that glass opening. And now adding cross the line, cross hatch. By crossing hatch it, the line then become thicker as it overlapping, just like this. The next is I'm going to add the more line to indicate the stool of these direct facing windows before I add the shadow of that frame on the other side, to be clear with these line drawings. Starting with the really fine line there, that will be the outline of this shadow of that side frame from the opening side frame, just like this. Starting vertical, and of course cross hatch it, and of course similar on this side, on the other side of it. And now I'm using a piece of paper to indicate the shadow on that side of this elevation. The reason is using this paper is when I do the cross hatch, it not come across on the other sides without adding line, vertical line, but using line paper. So there is no vertical line, but rather that none of this hatch line cross or vertical line cross over on the other side. That make it look clear and cleaned, and it make it look more different edge, clear edge from each side. And of course to do the same thing on this side. It is optional, but for this exercise I do this the same method, make it easier. So I can just cross the hatch line just like this without it reach beyond that boundary of the edge line. See, a lot clearer and a lot more determined, precise in a sense. And of course the next one is to add this shadow on that circle shape opening. The next process is to add. Now I'm adding that vertical line over the horizontal, over the diagonal hatch, to add a thicker layer, to make it much darker, just like this. The same on the other side too. And of course under the window opening, to indicate this, to bring that brick structure frame around or outline the window up forward to indicate that this is suddenly sticking out than the flat brick wall, just like this. Again, indicate that by adding that thicker line, indicate suggests there's a shade of that to bring that frame outline of this window frame out. And of course, the next one is to indicate shadow under that these features. These are going to be cornice features to divide between the lower window and the circle window. This is more of these ornamental features, really typical of the classical building. And of course, the next one is the window framing. This round shape sash window, starting with the outline of that window frames inside. And drawing a thicker line on that glass to indicate the glass windows there. Just like that. Like those. And of course the next one on the other side, make it much thicker, darker there. Done with the window for now. The next one to add more outline, slightly more detail on these features to bring in the character on this building. Just like this. Just like that. Because it's coming out, sticking overhang the big wall underneath. And of course, I like to add more detail on this circular opening. More of a fixed opening, more bringing more daylight rather than a ventilation. And assume there's a certain center point. It all to indicate that bricks structures around the window toward the center of that how to create this shape of that pattern on the window frame. And of course the next one, to bring that features out, I need to add the shade underneath by adding hatch underneath it, much darker. That will bring it out. Assume as is rather than just flat features there, just like this on each side. You see it's starting to come out visually. It's coming out that way. There. And of course I just slightly make it slightly darker now. And there's slightly a bit detail on that window framing, not too much because it's should be darker there anyway. And of course on this side, because on this side, on the left side here is where the light coming from. Just really fine line there, just like that. Just the profile outline, really detail, not too much. Each of that horizontal line of that frame will be correspond to the front facade here. They're connected because it's a symmetrical building. Then of course indicate the glass between the timber window frame, just like this. Now indicate a bit more detail on that windows opening, the brick structure and the opening. And again slightly darker on the other side, indicate that circular opening. This is just the final process, just a little touch on each one of them. And this stage is about looking back, stop, and start again, out. So here it is, my octagonal structure with arch opening windows. Thank you for your support, and I hope it's worth sharing, and I hope this drawing worthwhile. And thank you very much for your support again. And please click the subscribe button and like, and see you again in the next video. Thank you very much.